Hey, tailgaters! Ross of the Pigskin Tales podcast here. Feel that summer heat? It's not just the sun, it's the thrill of upcoming college football season, stoking the coals. So get ready for the season. Dive into the history books with Homefield, the premium collegiate apparel brand from Indianapolis. Homefield crafts incredibly comfortable gear designed with iconic vintage nods over 150 colleges. A library of history right on your chest. Homefield is the Indiana Jones of collegiate apparel, uncovering hidden gems from school archives. Unique mascots, logos, and even unforgettable moments frozen in time. Visit homefieldapparel.com and shop the archives. Homefield Apparel, where comfort, nostalgia, and the spirit of college football history unite. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com.
We have another great visit from Timothy P. Brown of footballarchaeology.com as he discusses a recent tidbit on the extra point attempt and its history, especially with a forward pass. Tim's coming up in just a moment to tell us all about the great history, and you have the opportunity, like I do, to listen into the history. It's coming up.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And guess what? It's Tuesday again, and we are here with Timothy P. Brown of footballarchaeology.com, and he has some great tidbits that he's had from some of his past writings that he's going to come on and chat a little bit about. And tonight, we're going to be talking about a very interesting one, came from March. Tim Brown, welcome to the Pig Pen.
Darren, good to see you again, and get a chance to chat about old-time football stuff. Always fun.
Yeah, old-time football, there's nothing like it, and there's so much that we don't know about it that your tidbits really bring to light. And, I learned so much from them, really enjoy them, and you always have something that I'm going to take out of each one of those and, store it in the old crock pot because it's something interesting from football yesteryear. And tonight is no exception. You really have an interesting one, sort of a development of the game that in some cases we still see today.
Yeah, so this one's about the first extra point conversion by forward pass, right? And so, there's a lot of stuff in football that, and, sometimes when I'm writing stuff, it's like, well, this was the first time this happened. Okay, well, this is the first time we know it happened. It could, in a number of cases, did it happen another time before that? Could be, and especially the earlier on we get, the more it's dependent on, it happening when there was a reporter there, when they wrote it in the newspaper. So I just wrote, fairly recently about the first crisscross or reverse in a football game, and that occurred in 1888 at Phillips Andover, the prep school, in the East. But big time school, wealthy kids, wealthy alums. Got reported in the Boston newspapers, and therefore we know what happened. Did somebody else pull it off somewhere else beforehand? Could have been, but the received wisdom is this is when it happened. So now with the first extra point conversion by forward pass, the timing is a lot easier to figure out that when that first happened, because until 1922, if you were going to convert the, after scoring a touchdown, if you were going to do the goal after touchdown, you had to kick it. You couldn't run it, you couldn't pass it, so it had to be by kick. So we know that the first conversion by pass couldn't have occurred until 1922. So then we get into, okay, well, when in 1922 did it happen? And so I at least don't have, I mean, try as I might, I could search every newspaper archive and comb through every book that I own. I don't have a real effective way to try to find that first time. So I kind of, in this case, I'm relying on a newspaper report from 1954. So a look back article saying, hey, here's what happened in 1922. But the cool thing was it wasn't a high profile game by two teams that you might not think of as high profile teams nowadays, but in 22 they were. So it was a game, maybe fourth week of the season, a game between Lafayette and Washington and Jefferson. So, nowadays you go, okay, Lafayette and Washington and Jefferson. But at the time, Lafayette was riding a 17-game winning streak. Washington and Jefferson was on a 17-point unbeaten streak. And I say unbeaten because they had tied California in the 1922 Rose Bowl. So, anyways, they, so really two top teams, that are playing, and they're playing in the Polo Grounds. So until 1922, like it's, you had to kick it, and typically people drop kicked it, but they did the, placement kick as well. So then in 22, you got the ball at the 5-yard line. And then you could kick it, you could, drop kick it, you could snap it to a holder and place kick it, you could run it, or you could pass it in, for a touchdown, or not for a touchdown, but, to for the conversion. But of course, since it's starting from the 5, the kick is probably your better option, unless you don't have a good drop kicker, or you don't have a good place kicker, a good snapper, or a good holder, right? So as it turned out, so in this game, Lafayette goes ahead 13-0 in the first half. And so, Washington Jefferson's kind of chugging along a little bit. But then in the third quarter, they score a touchdown and convert. So now it's 13-7. In the fourth quarter, Washington Jefferson's quarterback, a guy named Brinkert, he throws a touchdown pass. So now it's 13-13 tie. And so the game depends on their ability to convert. So the previous time they scored, he had drop kicked it. The quarterback had drop kicked for the extra point. So this time around, he sets up, the team sets up just like he's going to drop kick again. They snap it to him. And one of their ends, who are playing in tight, as they typically did then, scoots out into the end zone all alone, and he tosses them the P, and they convert the extra point by pass. So again, we think that's the first conversion by forward pass, and they ended up winning the game. That was the last score of the game, and so all the W&J fans leave happily, and the Lafayette fans are disappointed. So I have a trivia question for you, but about Washington Jefferson, but I'm going to set that aside to see if you want to cover, if you have questions about the game or anything like that we need to discuss.
Well, I guess one of the questions is not particularly about the forward pass, but it's right about that time as you share in your story that, and you just mentioned it, was one of the ways was the kick for the extra point, similar to what we know today. Maybe the scoring was a little bit different. Now, I'm interested in how the holder may have been, because I know on free kicks, the holder was laying flat on their stomach, which I'm not exactly sure why they laid on their stomach to do that. We have holders today for free kicks when on a windy day, when in the NFL you have a holder on the ball. But I was just wondering, did they take a snap from their stomach? Well, the holder was on his stomach for those kicks, or was it more similar on a knee like we do today?
Yeah, I think I've seen different versions of that. Initially, they may have tried to do the thing on the stomach. So, the reason they did it on the stomach was on the free kick, the defense had to be 10 yards back of the ball. And so, and as soon as the holder, or they used to call him the placer, but as soon as the holder set the ball on the ground, or as soon as the ball touched the ground, the defense could rush. So what the holder would do is lay prone. You basically he'd lay on his stomach, kind of perpendicular to the path of the kicker, right? And then he put one hand under the ball, one hand over the ball, and kind of balance it and kind of hold it right close to the ground. And then when the kicker was ready, he'd pull the underhand out. And then, so the ball was sitting on the ground, held by his upper hand, and then the kicker would come through, follow the path and kick it. So, I think, exactly why it developed that way, it's, kind of hard to know, but it does make sense. I mean, in a free kick situation, that particular method of holding makes sense. Now, once you introduce the snap, so the snap to the holder, that originated in 1896, and nobody. It's just one of those, nobody thought about it before. So two brothers who played at Otterbein in Ohio developed it, and then it spread quickly. But still, most people still drop kicked anyways, because that's what the guys were trained to do. So in those situations, I mean, early on, I believe mostly what they did was, the football was still transitioning from rolling the ball on its side. There was still some of that, or tumbling it back rather than really kind of a long snap like we think of it today. So they, a lot of times, the holder would kind of squat like a catcher in baseball, and so that you could move a little bit to grab the ball and then set it down. And then they started switching to what we think of today as a holder's, I don't know what you call that position, one knee on the ground or one knee raised. But I've got pictures of even into the late 30s, I believe it is. I've got a picture of like an Arizona player still doing it the squatter, the squatting catcher's way. So it probably depended on how accurate your long snapper was, all that kind of stuff. So, it's one of those that, when now we think of the snapping position or the holder's position as that's the only way that makes sense. But, they tried different things along the way.
Well, definitely the catcher's position makes a lot of sense. Adopting it from baseball, you have a wild pitch is much like a snap. You don't know where it's going to go sometimes, and they can maneuver a little bit, and they probably had a guy that played catcher on the baseball team, maybe as a holder too. He's familiar from maneuvering that. So yeah, it makes good sense. So all right, well, thank you for that. That's a good explanation. So okay, what do you got for your trivia question?
Okay, so this may be this is actually one of my favorite trivia questions, but we've talked enough that maybe this is an obvious answer to you, but maybe not so much for your audience. So you probably should allow the audience a little bit of time to figure it out. So the question is, there are 4 teams that do not currently play FBS football that have played in the Rose Bowl game. So what are those 4 teams?
4 teams that are not in the FBS currently that played in a Rose Bowl game.
Yep.
Okay, folks, before I answer, if you want to hit pause and answer it yourself, and I'm going to proceed to answer. I
mentioned one of them earlier in the podcast.
Okay, well, let me say, does it count military teams? Are you counting military teams in that?
Yes, I am. Okay,
all right. Well, after spending almost 50 days of Rose Bowl coverage just a few months ago, I hope I get this right. So I think the Great Lakes team.
Correct.
I'm going to say Washington and Jefferson, because we're talking about them tonight.
That's 2.
Let's see. Was it Columbia?
No.
Oh, or no. Cornell, the other Ivy League.
Nope, neither one of them ever played. Columbia played in the 34.
Yeah, Columbia. I'm going to say.
But it's not them.
No? Okay. Harvard, because they're not FBS.
Nope.
No? Okay. trying to think who the other military team was that played in the World War I era.
Actually, okay. So I asked the question. So it should be currently not playing Division I, because there are teams like Harvard, Columbia, Penn,
okay, all right,
that are playing
okay,
FCS. Yeah, my bad.
Okay, not a problem. All right. Okay, so they're not playing in Division I football at all. So all right. So okay, so
so you said Great Lakes, W and J.
I'm trying to think of the military team from California that one starts with an M. It's I tip my tongue on. I'm not. It's like Marimon or something. It's not.
Yeah. So Mare Island.
That's it.
They played twice. They played in 18 and 19, and then another military team.
Great Lakes. I'm stumped on the last one. I'm stumped on the last military team.
Great Lakes and Mare Island played in the 1919 game, and Mare Island and Camp Lewis played in the 18 game. Camp Lewis is sometimes referred to as 91st Division because that's where that division was stationed. But,
okay, you took away my easy bunnies with the Ivy League schools. I thought I had.
I screwed up with the way I asked the question, so I apologize. And to all the listeners that are, scouring their brains trying to figure out the answer.
Yeah, so we should have been like FBS or FCS schools, or not.
Yeah, or just D1. So D1. Normally, so there's some people who, when I ask this question, people are either just draw a blank or they might know, there's these military teams, but hardly anybody knows about Washington and Jefferson. They're typically the toughest one.
The only reason I know about Washington and Jefferson is because I'm in the process of doing a lot of research on a book that has a lot of W&J players in it. But although from the late 1890s and early 1900s, they played with W&J, but I have a couple books on W&J football. It's kind of still fresh in my mind. So I know they played.
And you're a PA guy anyway. So that's
right. They're Western PA team. So the furthest southern team from us, I think you can be in Western PA, and we're the furthest north. But hey, that's true. Hey, great question though. I really like that. That was a good one. So Tim, your tidbits are, bringing up items like this constantly every single day, sometimes a couple times a day. Why don't you share with the listeners how they too can share in on all the fun of hearing these?
Yeah. So, best way is just to go to my website, footballarchaeology.com, subscribe. And that by doing that, you'll get an email every night at like 7:00. I may actually push that a little bit later, but anyways, you'll get an email that with the story for that evening. And if you don't want the emails, then just you can follow me on Twitter, though that's becoming less and less useful as the days go on. I even did a blue check mark, which I normally wouldn't have done, but that doesn't seem to help.
I did the same and had mixed results myself, but we'll see how it goes. So, all right, Tim, I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again next week with some more great football history.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate it and look forward to it.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.